Hello and welcome back to the Just Follow Joy podcast. My name is Ariana Joy. I'm your host and I'm a human design reader and teacher. And I am so stoked you're here today because we are talking to the incredible Leann Wolff, who is a human design expert and professional, also BG5 career and business consultant. BG5 is a system that uses human design specifically with career and work. But today we are really talking about everything human design. We're just nerding out. She's a 1-3 profile. I'm a 5-1 profile. If you don't know, the one line's the investigator. We love the details. We love going down rabbit holes with all that granular kind of stuff. So this was really just a nerd session for us to talk about human design overall, get into some deeper stuff that we don't usually about on the podcast, and then also talk about our charts and each other's charts. That was really cool. We both got to kind of break down each other's charts and learn about what it's like to live that. And you get to hear that too. So I'm so excited for you to listen in. And before we do, I just want to say that if you like the Just Follow Joy podcast, if you love the Just Follow Joy podcast, it would help so much if you could like and subscribe if you're on YouTube. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, if you could leave a 5-star review and rating. This really helps us get the show out in front of people who will also like it and love it as well. But that is it from me for now. So let's dive in and talk to Leann. Hello and welcome to the show. Today I'm really excited because we don't only have another human design reader and teacher and human design coach. We have another 1-3 sacral being. And I was just telling Leann how excited I am because I've had other people with human design pop on. And I've even had other 1-lines pop on, but it's really, I don't know if I've actually ever had another human design expert with, I mean, I'm a human design teacher, still wouldn't call myself an expert, but I've had a human design expert with a 1-line come on, which is great because if you know anything about 1-line profiles, we absolutely love to nerd out. And this is something I saw so much in Leann's work. And I was like, oh, this is going to be such blast. So Leann, I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you, Ariana. I am very excited to be here. Hopefully your listeners have some time on their hands because here we are. We're going to dive in. We're going to go deep. What the heck?
We are going balls deep. First, I'd really love to talk about how you found human design and really what that experience was like for you.
Right. So human design found me. So I was a bank manager for 10 years at a local provincial bank. So I worked there for 10 years. And at the 7-year mark, the organization had indicated that they were going to go into a new computer system. And I remember sitting in the boardroom with all the managers around, and just this sensation came over me. And I'm like, I am not going to be here when this system goes live. And of course, it took 3 years for the system to come in, train on it, do all these things, right? And just before go live, a couple months before go live, I made sure that my teams were all fully situated. They knew exactly what they were doing. And I exited because I knew that the new system, for me, I'm a 5342, just like yourself. That new cycle, there was just this knowing inside of me, I was not going to be there for the new cycle. So thankfully, I had the wherewithal. Being a bank manager, I, had taken care of my finances. That I gave myself a year to just decompress. We also have a cattle ranch, so I hung out on my cattle ranch, just got a part-time job just so that, I could have a little bit of fun.
Sorry to interrupt you, but having a job as a bank manager and also owning a cattle ranch is like the most manifesting generator thing ever. And people who listen to my podcast know that I talk about my dad a lot just because you know when like you have someone near you and you know their design, it's so easy to see their life play out. And I think that he
Yeah.
lives his in such an obvious and interesting way. I can see when he's in alignment and so when he's not in it. And actually he has 2034 as well. And
Right.
so he was the director of tax at
Oh, okay.
this large
Okay.
company and ran a pizzeria at the same time for like 35 years. And growing up,
Yep.
I thought that was so normal because my dad just handled it so easily. And it's you guys have this incredible ability, especially with like gate 34, that being able to handle so many different things. But that just
Yeah.
came up and I thought that was so funny. Go on.
And we also have an oil field business as well. So, and then this coaching business is. So anyways, the so after that year of just decompressing, I'm like, hey, I'm ready to get out into the world. And I've always felt like I'm, I shouldn't say esoteric, but astrology, trusting intuition, kind of just, being in that elevated state was something that my oldest sister kind of taught me my whole life. So I typed into the computer new age business and human design came up. Like, what are the chances, right? Probably zero if you were to type that in now. And I jumped in with both feet. It was the International Human Design School and the BG5 Business Institute, and I took every class. So for 8 years, I sat in front of a computer and learned. Well, I did, readings just to, strengthen my skill and my capacity. So that's how human design found me. I have tried to quit as an MG. I have tried to quit numerous times and it will not let me quit. It just holds on to me. So I just have, I have a plethora of study. And with that third line, I've experimented with, thousands of people all over the world just playing in this material because I see, I see how magical it is when we just surrender to it. That's my story.
I love that. And surrender, I think, is definitely something I'd love to talk about in this episode. But also, I loved what you said about being a manifesting generator and it not really letting you quit. Because I mean, I'm sure, as you know, there are so many manifesting generators who are worried about quitting and moving on to the next thing and pivoting when their sacral center is done with something, which happens so quickly for many of you, especially if you're someone like Leann who is 2034. That is such instantaneous manifestation and movement towards your desires and taking action on that. And I know that so many manifesting generators are afraid of doing that. But I mean, if you hear Leann, like if this is something that is meant to stay around, it will,
Yeah.
especially if you found this in an aligned way through waiting to respond.
Yes. Yes. 100%.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I would actually really love, so I would love to talk about what it was like for you to learn that you were a manifesting generator and pure manifesting generator and how that really hit you when you first took in that information about how you were meant to operate.
Right. So for me, it was, how do I want to say this without sounding, arrogant? It was like a permission slip. I'm like, oh, because like big decisions in my life, I can go back, I can see exactly what happened, and my physical body moved me, and my mind, like everybody around me is like, what are you doing? Where are you going? How come you're doing that? Why are you leaving? Blah blah blah, right? All these things, and I just went with it. I'm like, I don't know what this is, but I'm moving with it. And every time there was a big decision, I just trusted that. So I recognize that. I also have the 2145. Every single job I was in from the time I was like a little kid, like 2 days into it, it's like, oh, we want to make you a manager, right? Oh, we want to make you a manager. I'm like, okay. And I managed people that were twice my age my whole life because as a young person they, that was just who I am, right? It's a strength I have. So when I look back, I'm like, oh, good Lord, right? It was just a permission slip to say, okay, I can let this be true and not try to fight it.
I love that. And so funny too that you were in banking with 4521, that controlling of resources.
Yeah.
It's so funny. But and that's the thing with gate 45, when it is something that is done in such an aligned way, which is totally possible. I feel like gate 45 and gate 26 get such a bad rap, right?
Yep.
Because they are powerful.
Yep.
But they can be like, the shadows can show up in like such a gross way, but the positives show up in an amazing way. Gate 45 is this voice for anyone listening, like kind of telling people what to do. It's the king or the queen. It's, this is our vision and I'm pulling it together. And then gate 21 is controlling resources. So like they're great at knowing where to put that stuff. So that's why I'm saying it makes so much sense that she would work in money and like finance basically. And it's so funny with gate 45 because if they are just living in alignment and following their design, then people will be like, tell me what to do, please. Like I kind of submit to this and it actually works for everyone. So it's always so nice to see. The reason I say this, Leann, is that we just did an episode. Have you seen the movie Wild Wild Country, the documentary?
No.
Okay, well, it's about Osho, of Bhagwan Rajneesh. the whole thing
Okay.
in like
Okay.
Oregon, and he had
Okay.
gate 45, and it was like and gate 26, and it was just like absolutely not used in a helpful way to anyone, besides himself and the accumulation of 18 Rolls Royces. But anyway, yeah, I love that. But something else I would like to ask you too is that, as a manifesting generator, it's so nice to hear that you trusted that. And I'll also say that like my dad is like that too. But
Mhm.
did you find, because with channel 2034 and things can move so quickly and you have that capacity to move so quickly as a manifesting generator, one, did you feel like it explained why the world moved so slow in comparison to you, or did you feel that? And then also, what was your experience with frustration through maybe trying to initiate things? Did you go through that?
So I am left variable environment, so I'm designed to be observed. So honest to God, I never noticed that like the world doesn't move as fast as me because I'm moving too fast to even notice that it's like not moving fast enough for me. People are like, they just kind of stand back and they're like, whoa, because I can like multitask and move through, numerous things at one time. And it can be almost like, the Tasmanian devil and this little tornado that flies through. And, sometimes there's shit coming off and sometimes there's rainbow and unicorns coming off. So it all depends on what that is that day. But for your question around frustration, I'm not really sure if it was frustration ever came from me initiating. Frustration always came for me from overriding my sacral. And when it said no, I would push it to a yes. When it said yes, I would push it to a no. And it wasn't so much the initiation, mental initiation. It was more me just overriding that sensation and that available energy.
Mm, yeah, which I can relate to. And I don't know if this was the way it was for you, but I mean, you're a sacral manifesting generator. And with me, I really had to learn to trust myself reading a book by its cover, and
Mm,
constantly, it's because it's so funny. I don't know if you've experienced this with emotionals, but when I tell them that they have to wait, sometimes they're like, oh, so it's like I have a cage on me, I can't just take action now. But at the same time, it's so funny because sacral generators, then we in manifesting generators, then we just doubt what comes to us immediately, right? And so
I
emotionals are
know.
like, I'll never be sure, I had to wait through my emotional wave, and we're like, oh my god, I'd love to like give myself time to make this decision, but I just have to trust that it is right now.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And and what in my experience working with people that have that emotional authority, once they make patience their best friend, like their whole entire world opens up for them. Because when they're patient, that nervous system can regulate, and then you and I who have an undefined can actually notice a really healthy emotional wave, right? If they're not healthy, I'm like, all right, hold on a minute here, people, right? But when they're healthy, I love it. I love to engage with it. I love to let that flow through me so I can gain the wisdom of it, because it's important for you and I to gather that wisdom.
Yeah, I would have no clue what emotional wisdom is if we didn't have emotionals, which is, it's so funny because I am a non-emotional, obviously, as a sacral generator. And my whole life growing up, it was like, you are so emotional, right? And I mean, technically not, right? I'm just very expressive. But yeah, it is. Being around that healthy emotional energy of an emotional, I've really come to enjoy that now and see that there is so much power in it when I can know it's not me, right? But which is one of the reasons why, you know, this whole work with our undefined centers is so powerful and so lovely. And it's funny because I was just thinking before we came on, in traditional human design, I this is what pushed me away from it for so long, that it just sounds so negative and focuses on all the places where you're like doing things wrong or avoid this. But the truth is that when we live in alignment like with our designs, that naturally feels good anyway. So these are the parts where it's like just this is where you could work on, because the rest of the stuff you don't have to worry about, you'll fall into that naturally. And
Yes.
so for me, with, knowing those undefined centers, even though it can sound like negative of like, are you avoiding confrontation, are you dealing with this, it really does help me realign with my joy, which was funny because when I first started teaching human design, I'm like, I'm not going to focus on the bad, right? And I still go positive forward, that's just the way I am. But this whole thing here is just, it just helps so much. I can't even put that into different words. It just helps.
Yep. Yeah. And like for me, how I begin with a client, I go to the openness. Because if the openness hasn't been shoveled out, if all of that stuff hasn't been cleared out, the connection with the strategy and authority is so difficult. Because our physical beings are ran on chemicals, right? And electricity. If those chemicals and that electricity aren't in alignment, those decisions will never be in alignment because we're designed to make those decisions through the physical body. So the physical body isn't healthy, right? That's why it's so important with the cognition and the determination to tap in and really strengthen the brain, strengthen the physical body, clean out all that, you know, trauma. I don't love that word, but because I'm not trauma trained, but cleaning all of that stuff out and recognizing that that openness is a space where we go out and have experiences, but people also come in and experience us. And if they've been kicking off their shoes, all that mud in that area, if they've been kicking off their shoes every time they walk in a door or scooch in one of our windows, and there's this big pile of dirt there, then we can't go out and actually have experiences that are correct for us. We get very, very clogged up in all of that. So it's about cleaning that out first. And then once that's cleaned out, now we can tap into the real chemical configuration of the body. Like you and I are hormone driven, period. Sacral is all about hormones. So if our hormones are not in alignment, then we are going to be super emotional, right? Then all of a sudden, the fear and the adrenaline and the thyroid, all these things start to like, you know what I mean? Hold us back from that real knowing of that energy frequency that's coming out of that sacral. So
Mm-hmm.
I always go to the openness because I think it's so important. I think it's so important.
Yeah. Yeah, for practical use of your design. And that makes a lot of sense. And also, I'm like thinking about how emotional I was as a kid. And I have gate 22. So that's like this kind of moodiness that gets easier over time. And then I also have gate 36. So everything felt like a crisis for a very long time. Actually, funny story, tangent. I went to Vegas with some friends a few years ago and I wasn't feeling great. Like I didn't feel like I was like a part of the group. And so I wasn't having a great time. And then later I called my friend and I explained to her, I was like, hey, I don't feel like I was really treated as a part of the group. That's why I was pulling away because I was sad. I didn't feel like you were including me. And she said, oh, yeah, we didn't know what was going on with you. And I was like, well, Ariana's kind of always working on something. She's always going through something. And I was like, oh, how dare you? And I was like, well, actually, that's kind of true. Like, okay, yeah, that's not wrong. But what I was gonna say was that I did experience a lot of that like high emotion when I was a kid, and also this is coming back to what you're saying about the body. Um, Even as a young child, I was like that, and I did not eat well as a kid, like at all. And also, it's funny with nervous digestion, I was like pulled towards bouncing on a yoga ball while I ate and like doing that kind of stuff, but also like was not eating food that was good for me. I was like a terrible eater as a kid, and yeah, I think that's just so interesting. I've never really thought of it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I get that. Like I understand the 36 gate. Yours is in the third line. I have that like the 30 and the 36 for me hanging off of my undefined emotional center. It's all about composure and justice. So I've always had this energy field where when a crisis came, there was always composure.
Mm.
Like I was the one people called on because I'm like, poof, I can just move into action so quickly to like hold that together. Like for example, yesterday I go for groceries and there's this lady, she's walking into the store and she's got a cane, and of course we have snow up here in Alberta, Canada. and she's got a cane, and my intuition was like, she's in a trip right there. And I watched her, and she started to trip, and I just grabbed her hips and I held her up, and she's like, whoa, how did you know that was, I'm like, so good, I got ya, let's get you in the building, right? And she's like, well, you did your good deed today. And like, I just have this capacity to move into that composure and hold on in that moment of crisis. It's so crazy, it just
Mm.
happened.
Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice to have? And also, it's so funny is I'm really clocking your gate 50 responsibility as well,
Yep.
right? Like I can and I will. Like that intuition for taking responsibility is so there.
Yep.
And I'll tell you,
Yep.
it's so funny too. But I I do that generator thing where it's like I'm trying to help someone without them asking me, and I just like make it worse. This woman was trying to get out of my apartment complex, and she had these bags, and so she was like trying to open the gate, and I was like, oh, I should go open the gate for her. But the thing is, she was like standing in front of it, and I forgot that the gate opens inward, so I was like making it worse because she had to like back up, and it was just slowing everything down. And I walked away, and I was like, why did I do that? That gate 50, and I also have gate 27, the
Yep.
whole channel of nurturing too. So
Yeah.
very,
Yeah.
very much inclined towards doing that.
Yeah. Yep. So funny.
So funny.
And what
But
I love about your 22, so I'll share this. So what I've experienced in that 22, and this may or may not be true for you, is there can be a lot of grief that's learned through that gate. So big losses, right? Because it's moving us to the 12, which is about standstill, right? It's caution, it's abandon, but it opens us up or closes us off from an experience, like from like a social experience. And oftentimes I see this 22 go deep into learning about grief.
I
Right.
highly resonate with that. Deeply, deeply resonate with that. And it's for me, I believe I have 22 4. I have your chart up. I don't know if my chart up right now.
22-3.
22 3. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, honestly, what I've had to learn a lot with gate 22, anyone listening, which is the gate of openness and like emotional openness, and I mean to life as well, but and grace and a little bit of charm to it. The thing I've really had to learn about this is that I have always been like far too emotionally open with people and getting to that shadow of, just sharing at the wrong time emotionally and learning a lot about that. So it's just so funny because I remember learning gate 22 the way it was explained to me was like, this is effortless grace and charm, and I was like, no it's not. If it's in my chart around connecting, which I know that I can kind of work a room when I'm in the mood, but
Right.
I had
Yeah.
so many experiences growing up where I just said to myself, I'm so awkward, I always say the wrong thing at the wrong time, and I
Mm-hmm.
really did have to go through experience to know that. And that's also why it's so cool to know what line your gate is on. I obviously, anyone listening, like I don't say this in readings because this is a lot for people to know, but if you want to go deeper into your chart, it is a really great way to understand how your gate expresses itself. And honestly, Leann, like you inspired me to look a little bit more at these because I'm just like, oh, I just have a lot of 3 line energy in my chart. I'm a 5-1, so the 5 line is very strong for me. But this is great because looking back on my life, especially with gate 36, which can be, I'll just say it can be super traumatic to feel those crises so deeply, even if in the external world, it's like that wasn't a crisis. You were bullied when you were 10, but like gate 36 feels that so deeply. And as I'm sure Leann, because you have it too.
Yeah.
But also it was just nice to know that 22 being on the 3 line, which is experience, like getting yourself burned, trial and error, and then gate 36, which is like you kind of go through these crises to get good at managing them. That's helped me so much in acceptance of myself.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any gates that have really given you that sense? And I'm guessing if you do, they might be 3 line gates as well.
So the one that so then I look at my sleeve. Okay. So if you go to the sleeve and you take a look at those lines, so 18.4, that's my Pluto, my truth and transformation. What does it say? Being competent. Gate 50. Gate 50 is corruption, right? So I can look at these things through a very negative lens, or I can go, oh yeah, there's some patterns in my life that I don't actually need to change. So I'm incompetent of changing them because they don't need to be changed. And then the 50, I do bring that. I corrupt people. I corrupt their belief systems. I corrupt what they're deeply holding onto so that they can actually bust into a new pattern. So, I could have looked at those when I first came to design as something very negative. But now through the experience and seeing it, I'm like, oh, this just naturally happens for me. This is just what I do. Right. And like I just am no nonsense when I'm coaching people. Right. Um I don't butter them up. I don't do any of that kind of stuff because it's like, no, I know that the Uranus must corrupt, right? Bring this unusual flavor of corruption into their world to kind of shake their foundation so that they can actually get to something more solid. And of
Mm.
course, along my nodal line, which is my fractal line, they're also 1-3s. So first lines having that solid foundation, third lines, we're always tearing shit down, right? We're always, and trying to build it back up and tearing it down and building it. So it's like this never ending process. So it's important for me to have that corruption so that my fractal line can go, oh, I'm believing something that, doesn't serve me anymore, or those opinions are actually making me hold on to things that are good for me. Okay, I can see that now, right? So that's kind of the two gates that really interested me
Mm.
because they felt such a negative connotation, but really they're not. They're actually very beautiful.
Yeah. First
Yeah.
off, your depth of knowledge is astounding.
Oh.
And so impressive. And secondly, I think too that there can be, and I guess it's just, I just got really hung up on this when I first found human design. And it's so funny because now when other people get hung up on it, I'm like, it's not a big deal. But when you hear this language, first off, Ra didn't hold
Yeah.
back gate 51 as
No.
his sun gate. I'm here to shock you, and I don't really give a
Yeah.
fuck if you don't like being
Yes.
shocked, which was
That's right.
necessary for him to like get the right people on
Yeah.
track with him, people
Absolutely.
who would wholeheartedly get behind human design, which is what we needed.
Yeah.
But also it's, yeah, some of it just does sound negative. And so, for example, actually, with gate 27, I have that on the third line. And the way that they described that is through greed. And I still don't really understand that one as much.
Mm.
Because my knowledge with the line expressions of the gates doesn't go as deeply as Leann's does. But I was just like, greed, but I'm so not greedy.
So with greed, think about the age old analogy, right? If your cup isn't full, you can't actually give. So in order to nourish, you need to have. And the 50 really, because you've got that connection there, the 50 is the cauldron. It holds all of the wisdom. It holds all of the information. And it's just a big pot of information. Okay. And in order for you to dole that out to your tribe, you have to have that cauldron full. So your first line plays into that, of course. You're gathering the knowledge, you're gathering the wisdom. And along your fractal line, you have 1s and 6s. So, of course, they love that. They love that wisdom. They love that knowledge. And what I heard you also say is that you like to keep things very positive and optimistic. Well, of course you do, because your 6 lines that are coming into your fractal line, they are, that's their end frequency, is optimism, right? So they're designed to connect with that optimism. So, and then I look at your 5, okay? A 5 is also a hoarder or distributor, which plays into that 27. So if you don't have it, you can't distribute it. So you hoard and you hoard and you hoard, and your 14 naturally just generates resources, whether it's from other people or from yourself, whatever. It just naturally, it's the treasure trove of resources, that 14. So I also have that. And I know that it doesn't matter how much money I spend, because I know that money just flows right back in. I don't know how it's going to flow in. It just always does. There's always a treasure trove of diamonds and gold and wisdom and everything in that 14. So
Yeah,
when
it's
you're
pretty
talking
sick.
about
That's
it,
one thing I'll say about my chart.
yeah,
It's pretty sick.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And can I
Beautiful.
actually interrupt you and real quick just to ask you something?
Yeah,
So I am not like
yeah.
traditionally trained through IHDL. Um,
Yeah.
So I've heard of fractal before. I've heard it in terms of the gene keys. But just for anyone listening, because I don't really know the way that you're using it. Do you mind explaining to us what a fractal is?
So fractals are like geometry, right? So like if you were to take like a diamond, right? Like a large diamond and you hit it with a hammer and it shatters, there's fractals of frequency there. And each crystal has their own fractal that they're going to stay on. And because the nodes are like our trajectory, it's our movement that we move through. That's where you're going to find the line values of that of your nodes. That's the trajectory. Those are the people that you're going to see. That's the people you're going to bump into. That's just the humans that you're going to interact with on your street, right? So you have a 3 and a 50. So you're always ordering chaos. You're always educating your tribe. And that education plays into that first line. So in your marketing, you want to talk about like the depth. That's why you go in and you teach and you share that wisdom, because that first line wants that. They want that 50 to teach them. They want you to, bring this order to the chaos. And then the sixth line, in order for them to now embody that fully as they walk along their 3-stage life, now they can actually sit in the material and be correct in the material, and they can then go out and experience and be seen as the experimenter of this. That makes sense.
Makes a lot of, yeah. And it's just I love talking about human design at this level too, because man does it go deep and man does it get granular. That's something I love about astrology too. I actually had a conversation with my friend the other day where she was just like, well, human design is more specific than astrology. And I was like, well, not necessarily. I mean, in terms of like biochemical stuff, and it covers a lot of different things just because it's a synthesis of different systems. Astrology actually does get really granular, but they're different languages still. And like, no matter how hard I try, I will just never understand astrology the way that human design makes sense to me, right? And it's funny because like my mom, my mom is she's a smart cookie. She's sharp, but to this day, I can explain to her like the basics of human design, and she just does. It does not go in. She doesn't get it, and I don't think she's designed for it to.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way. Like astrology, that's where I started. I took astrology classes with Deborah Silverman. She actually came up here to Alberta, and I did, I don't know, I think like a year. I just kind of went to some random classes of hers. And the whole time sitting there, of course, this was before human design had entered into my world. I'm like, there's something missing here. What's missing? What's missing? And then as soon as human design found me, I'm like, oh, that's what's missing. Now this all makes sense, right? So I just, same thing. I couldn't grasp the astrological aspects. And also, it might be because it only plays in the mind, right? The astrological aspect is the psychology piece, because it's only using one aspect, right? Where human design is bringing in the physical body aspect too, right? So, possibly that's what it was. I'm not sure, but
I think astrology it is so fantastic to understanding your mind, and also it makes a lot of sense for your life path and your life trajectory. But
yep,
with human design, what's so amazing about it is that strategy and authority thing, which anyone listening, this is why I say strategy and authority is because that's what makes the system so unique, is that how you use your energy and
yeah,
how sorry, I'm getting so amped up. I love
yep,
this.
yep,
Like how you function and how you exchange energy with other people. And it goes so deep, and it's just so cool. Yeah, that makes
yep,
sense to me.
yeah. And so, like, how I visualize it is it's a sky clock, right? Astrology and the astrological movement, it's a sky clock. And what human design teaches us, it teaches us what cog in the wheel we are in that sky clock. Okay. But now, as that sky clock continues to go around and around and around, what design does is it tells us, like, we have a monopole, we can stay centered right here and make decisions on whether or not we're going to interact with that next movement of the sky clock. Okay, oh, this is something I do need to learn. I'll interact with it. If I don't need to learn it, I just leave it alone. So that's where I see design is totally different. Is astrology kind of pulls you around the clock because it's mental, but design kind of puts you in the middle of the mechanism so that you can be correctly aligned with who and what you are designed to interact with. if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I love that. Astrology
Yeah.
pulls you around the clock, human design kind of puts you in the clock.
Yeah.
It makes you
Yeah.
part of the clock.
Yeah.
I really,
Yeah.
really love that
Yeah.
metaphor. And actually what that made me want to bring up, Leann, because we talked about this before we hopped on, was this idea of the magnetic monopole and, kind of
Mhm.
passenger consciousness in human design and how we're all magnetic. Because something I was telling her was that when I explain magnetism, usually who I'm talking to are people like Leann and myself, generators and manifesting generators who have open and enveloping auras, and I just say that they're highly magnetic auras, and that's not incorrect, but it is a simplification of what's actually going on. And the reason why I say that only for sacral beings mostly, or I focus on that for sacral beings, is because we are so good, having been trained and conditioned our entire life to initiate, to
Right.
ignore the fact that we're magnetic and not take advantage of that. So it's not
Yeah.
that everyone isn't, but it's like particularly important for generators and MGs. But something I've never actually talked about on this podcast is the magnetic monopole and how that works. And I really love the way you explain it. So could you?
Sure, sure. So the magnetic monopole, it's the driver. So we have our personality crystal that sits just above the scalp. We have our design crystal that is actually embedded in the ajna because it actually conceptualizes the physical body. And then we have the monopole, which is the driver. So what the monopole does is it attracts to us the personality and the design, holds us together in the illusion, but it also magnetizes the experiences we need to have through the openness. So it brings that all to us. So, going back to why is it so important to have your open centers, your open gates, your open channels clean, is so that when that magnetic monopole is attracting those people, they don't have to walk through your shit to get to you either. And you don't have to experience them covered in dung, right? And then all of a sudden you become very reactive because that's how you're experiencing them. Okay. So, how I see it is once that's all cleaned, now your experience in life becomes clean, it becomes crisp. And now you get to interact and go, oh, I'm going to gain this wisdom or I'm not, period. You don't need to, how do I want to say? You don't have to overthink it because your decision making will indicate to you, okay, this is the right interaction. This isn't the right interaction. Maybe somebody walked in your door and you're like, no, thank you, not today. And that's okay because you're taking care of your own physical body. But maybe they walk in the door and it's something that your physical being needs to learn. Okay, come on in. Let's have a conversation. Let's learn. Let's interact. Let's run a business together and see how far this goes. Let's have a relationship. Maybe we'll have kids together. All these kind of things start to happen when we're trusting the decision making versus trying to figure it out in our mind. Yeah.
Absolutely. Um, and the reason why I brought this up too is because you have a video on this. It's called How to Be Magnetic AF, which I
Yeah.
love. And it's great too because it's good to remember. In particular, you used manifestors, which I love
Yeah.
because manifestors are essentially, their aura is like the opposite of a generator or a manifesting generator. Ours kind of
Yeah.
sucks in like this, and then theirs pushes out like that to sort of like find
Yeah.
things. They generate the
Yeah.
energy, not generate, that's misleading. They create the energy that pushes outward. And then you were saying like that can, then they're told that that's repelling, right? So then
Right.
how could you be magnetic and also repelling? But with the magnetic monopole drawing things towards you all the time, then that means
Yeah.
that you are still, that's why manifestation, the law of attraction, still works for every energy type then.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. 100%. And when I look at our manifestors, right? Um, the repelling aspect, right? They're designed to be closed and repelling because they're just like Moses. They have to have the strength to now repel whatever the resistance is. So their energetic aura and that repelling, it's not about repelling people, it's about repelling the resistance. So they are the time space crack people. They create the time and the crack in the time space continuum. They open up that area. And now the builders, generators and manifesting generators, can go in and build. Our projectors and our projectors that are the advisors can advise that and keep that building in a satisfactory way. And then our reflectors can stand there and reflect back and say, okay, this is working, this isn't working. But without that initial crack in the time-space continuum for that container to be creative, then you're going to have all the frustration, the bitterness, and all that stuff. That's why in BG5 terminology, that innovative energy is so important with our manifestors. So the reason that kind of came up for me was there in my mentorship. One of the fellows was talking about, he was in a group and the manifestors were all like very sad that they keep being told that they're repelling, right? So immediately, because I have that open head, open ajna, open identity center, like I get visualizations. I can see this stuff because it's like this pure reflective energy that goes on there. And I could see exactly what's going on. So I helped him understand that the manifestor energy isn't repelling people, it's repelling the resistance. Like if Moses didn't have the energy or the capacity to repel the sea, then the Exodus couldn't have happened, right? The people couldn't have moved through. But he had the energy to stand there and just go and make the space. That's what manifestors do. And they are still so important because they've been told, oh, you're not going to be leaders anymore, blah, blah, blah. No, they're leading in a different way. They're leading in a way where that repelling and that container of creation is still going to be created through them. But now our projectors are actually going to help, ask the correct questions to our generators and manifesting generators. So instead of being told from the manifestor how to build and going into frustration, now we are going to be guided and asked to use that energy in a more satisfying way. But the container is still the same. It's a manifested energy container that's being created.
I don't think a lot of manifestors have heard that you are a container creator. And how important is that to have that structure that we work within, just as you were saying, or else no one has that space. And also, I do think, yeah, there was this in the generator class that Raw gave. He was saying, like, yeah, and manifestors can't tell people what to do anymore because then we got shot. And I was like, I mean, in essence. But yeah, and I think to most manifestors too, I I'm like, well, to be honest, don't you just want room to do what you want to do, right? Because that's just what you're built to do anyway. And most of them are like, yeah, I just want people to stop getting in my way.
Yeah.
And so, and
Yeah.
this is to what Leann is saying, like this is why it's so important to let our manifestors do that. And of course, manifestors, it's kind if you can let us know what's going on just so we don't get in your way, because we just cannot read you as well as you think we can. Like it's not as obvious to us as it seems to you. Always err on the side of caution, I would say.
Right.
But yeah, I love that too. And because and also, if I'll say that in my experience with manifestors, it's like if you're repelling people, it's because they're the wrong people. Like they're kind of part of, I mean, maybe, I don't know if you would say it this way, Leann, but like they're kind of part of the resistance. And you also said that part of that repelling the resistance is through informing too.
So I see that in a couple ways. Yes, people can be the resistance. However, usually when people are the resistance, it's because the information hasn't happened.
Mm.
So I live with a manifestor. Okay. So like now we kind of got our communication. I'm not going to say we're perfect because we're not. Even after 11 years in human design, we're still not perfect. However, what I recognize is when he's just moving forward without informing me, like immediately what I do is I step in front of him and go like, what's going on? Like I need to know, right? So that I know where my energy, like where I'm going to be used in my energy field. But now we've got it so that it's like, okay, now he informs and then he asks me, can you be a part of this? Can you do this? Can you do that? So that my sacral can engage. But I get it. People will look like the resistance sometime. And it's only because they're afraid, right? They're afraid. So imagine, right? This might be a bad analogy at this point in time, but this is an analogy I use, is like you're on a plane and a manifestor just gets up, straps on a parachute, pops open the door, and jumps out. It's like, holy shit, nobody knew. And they get sucked in, right? Like they're flying in space with no parachute. So it's important that the manifestor inform so that the resistance, they like those people don't have to get in the way and say, whoa, hold, what are you doing? What's going on? Now, once that resistance is moved out from the information, totally different story. And that's why people got so suspicious of our manifestors
Mm,
because it's like, oh, we don't know what door they're going to open. Oh my God, oh my God. So then we started to get in front of them and then we asked them questions. Well, manifestors don't love to be asked a whole bunch of questions because that feels like a control mechanism, right? But once they inform, then the resistance moves. Okay. So there has to be a strength in that aura to be able to repel all of that resistance. Yeah.
love that. Yeah, absolutely love that. And I have to say, when you were saying all that stuff of like, we can be suspicious of them, we're
Yes.
afraid, that's exactly how I have to admit that that's how I feel as a generator. And what's so funny when you were describing this, also hilarious that you're like, maybe this isn't the right time to use a plain metaphor. It's okay. I said something about shooting people earlier. But but that whole thing about getting sucked in with them, it's almost like
Yeah.
you can this is the best way I can describe it is I've felt before, like when manifestors just do their own thing. Mentally, I'm like, I shouldn't have a problem with that. I'm a Libra. So I'm like, let live and let live. But it's almost
Yeah.
like I get magnetized to like stop you and be like,
Yeah.
why? Why are you doing that? This is like almost like a
Yep.
protection mechanism. And it's funny with manifestors sometimes. I'm really working on overcoming this, but
Mm,
sometimes and I know other people who aren't manifestors feel this way too with manifestors. It can be like, what gives you the right? Like, why are you just like going off and doing this and not like, why do I not get to be involved in the thought process here?
right.
When it's not really my right, it is their life, but
Yes.
it does help so much to reduce that resistance for them by by just speaking it out. For any manifestors listening, it's like the last thing I want to do is control someone. I hate being told what to do. I hate being controlled. So it's like the last thing that I want to do. And manifestors, they usually don't want to do that to other people either. But it
Mm-mm.
just helps me and you both so much. And honestly, first and foremost, you, if you just tell me what's going on.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. It's just the process becomes a lot more, to use your 20-second gate, graceful. Yeah.
absolutely. Oh, this has
We could
been
talk for a long time.
we could. I could talk to you forever. This is so fun. Um, but this has been so awesome. Leann, thank you for coming on and sharing your wisdom. I love hearing you explain things the way that you do. Um, and also you also have gate 56. So no wonder we like kind of get each other
Yeah.
in that way, like the
Yeah.
storyteller
Yeah.
metaphor. But
Yeah.
one last thing I want to ask you, and I actually haven't asked people this in my podcast for a while. I completely dropped off with this, but in any part of your life, what's one thing that's bringing you a ton of joy right now?
So this year I just am saying, fuck it. I'm gonna just have fun. And I'm just allowing for fun to be more permeating in my world. And what's really fun for me is truly my mentorship. So I have people sign up to the self study, which of course is very robust. There's like 210 modules in there. It's yeah, I got a lot of information. And then from there they can come into the mentorship. And that's really truly what has just it's just fun for me to be in that container, in that space, and do this. Have conversations. We talk about charts. We talk about human design. That's what's fun.
Mm.
Yeah.
We are on the same wavelength because that's literally what I'm
Yeah.
doing this year too. I'm in
Yeah.
a 9 numerological year as well, so I'm letting go of a
Okay.
lot of the stuff that is not right. But oh man, I am in there with you. But
Yeah.
thank you so much again for popping on, Leann.
Thank
You
you.
rock. Everyone else listening, you rock, and I will talk to you next time.